I would like to commence this webinar now. So first of all, thanks for a big number of people that have registered for this event. We'll be having a portion of those people joining us live, and the session will be recorded and shared with all of those who have registered but can't make this particular time. So thanks for your interest and your engagement in this session. So my name's James Chisholm. I'm co-founder of People Coach, and today our webinar, which we run quarterly as a spotlight series, is all about talent management. Before I go any further, I do want to make an acknowledgement of country. I'm on Wurundjeri people's land in Melbourne, Australia. We have a very much a global audience and actually a global panel as well. So I'd like to acknowledge here in Australia elders emerging, current and past before we kick off this session. Our panelists for today, we have a very senior panel in terms of leadership experience and responsibilities at three global organisations. So we have Lisa Whitehead, who runs the Honeywell buildings business for Australia and New Zealand. We have Sasha Lee Murray, who runs the Laminex business as part of Fletcher's group, again running that business out of Australia. And we have Tom Keller, who's global CEO of Max Steel Trading, who's, I guess, all over the place, being a global trading business, but who's joining us at a very unsociable hour right now at 6 a.m. in Dubai. So I'd like to thank the three panelists for joining this session and sharing their experience and their wisdom on this issue of managing talent for the benefit of their organisation's strategic goals and growth. So these sessions always run better where we get interaction and questions from the audience, and the way we do that with a large audience number is through the chat box. So if you do have a question, and I really encourage you to ask questions, I'll be monitoring that chat box and directing certain questions to the panel. Feel free to ask general questions to the panel or to single out who you would like to answer your question. So I am going to kick it off with some questions to the panel. And Lisa, I might start with you first of all, with your experience at Honeywell. So the World Economic Forum in their global research states that 47% of global employers found talent management to be a core skill needed for the next 5 years. I guess as a P&L owner at Honeywell, at a huge global corporation, how do you sort of see the importance of talent management as you plan for your strategic goals and your business growth?
Yeah, thanks, James. For us, strong talent is so essential. You know, when you think about it, a business really is a legal entity that enables engagement with the market. And so you're only really as strong as the people within the business. So having a really well-engaged, well-trained, diverse and productive workforce really translates from a business perspective into higher revenues. You know, people that feel they make a difference, and I know that, you know, personally, that's how I feel. If you feel like you're making a difference, you'll go the extra mile to generate better business outcomes and, you know, most importantly, better customer engagement. You know, and when you think about that, you need to focus on retention because it's so essential. As, you know, if you look at it business-wise, the cost of high turnover, it's a real cost, and it impacts customer outcomes as well because the consistency of delivery of the team isn't there. So there's, you know, the time you take recruiting the right fit. Again, if you have turnover, you've got to have the right fit for the culture. You've got retraining. You know, at Honeywell, our business is pretty technical, and so retention impacts us a lot because upskilling can take a long time. So I think, you know, that's so important, and we measure our retention and really focus on it and focus on our talent as well.
Thanks, Lisa. It's interesting. One of the ways a loud message I'm hearing there is I never heard anything about it's the right thing to do, it's fair, it's good, etc., which I think is all true, but actually running a business, you're converting it into outcomes that actually affect customers, affect growth, etc. So, and I guess today that's the theme. Let's say it's a given that allowing talent to grow and feel that they're contributing is a great thing to do, but ultimately, actually, whether you're a not-for-profit or a for-profit, you have organisational goals you need to achieve, and we're doing this for those reasons. I might move to you, Tom. At Max Steel, you've got a global employee base, and I guess anything to add there from what Lisa's already shared?
No, thanks. For us, retention of employees is just critical to our business in the sense that so we have 175 people worldwide. We trade steel. So we have 38 traders in different parts of the world, 3 hub offices. And our average tenure of those 37 people is about 11 years, 11 and a half years. And that is a huge selling point for us when we go out and we find talent. So we're not looking at buying a steel company or a fabrication company. It's not an asset. Our assets are our people. And coming through the last 5 years, 6 years in the global market of a pandemic, 2 wars, 2 Trumps, the problem solving and deep thinking is an intangible thing you can't teach. It's through experience. And that is so powerful when you're not face to face with each other every day. So we just hired 2 people, one here in Dubai and one in Vietnam, from another trading company. And our major selling point was the platform is here. The average tenure is 12 years, and people like where they're at. And so that's just a huge benefit for us, obviously. So,
yeah, and it's again to Lisa's point around the cost of turnover. Clearly, an 11-year retention average converts directly to financial outcomes as well. So yeah, thanks, Tom. Sasha, anything, I guess, at Laminex or more broadly at Fletcher that you see to add on this front?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think so at Laminex, we've got nearly 1,300 people across about 40 sites in Australia, really mixed workforce of frontline operational workers to marketing people to salespeople, etc. Look, having top talent and highly engaged, high-performing teams is one of our key business strategies. It's actually part of our strategy on a page, and just like any growth strategy, it is integrated into our planning process. So we actually do talent mapping and reviewing twice a year cross-functionally as a senior leadership team. We actually spend a whole day together twice a year reviewing each department's top talent, where we think they could go, how we can cross-pollinate that talent across different functions, because if we're going to build the senior leaders of tomorrow, we need to make sure those people are not just being looked at in their functional area of expertise, but really intentionally moving those people cross-functionally to build really strong general managers of the future. And that takes time and effort and considered effort. So I think an example of how we've been really successful with that is the last 3 senior leadership appointments we've had at Laminex. GM of Sales, GM of Marketing and Head of R&D have all been internal, which I'm really proud to say. And our recent Head of R&D came in as a part-time mum 5 years ago as a product manager. And we've intentionally mapped her capability and her development. She's been through a number of programs and has now stepped up to SLT. So I think having that long-term view is critical, and not just looking at the cost of losing an employee, but the productivity and growth benefits of building them to the next level has been a critical part of our success.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we're just starting to touch on some practical ways to do this. So, Sasha's review cycle of talent, how that happens. Otherwise it is all lip service. It's all statements of intent as opposed to processes and programs. So interesting little glimpse into how you approach that at Laminex. We're going to dive a bit deeper later into some other practical advice for the audience, I guess, no matter where they're at, as to how do you actually, make this into actions rather than intent. But I think at the moment we're saying, there's a reason to do this that makes real sense. And Sash, maybe sticking with you here to sort of move into the other lens. So as I said, that first question came from World Economic Forum data about what employers value, which is talent, development, retention, attraction. Interestingly, sort of the other side of that coin is employee research globally. And Randstad is a huge Dutch firm that they do a whole lot of things, including recruitment, but they do a lot of research around what's changing in the eyes of employees globally. And there's a figure that I've sort of latched onto that I just think is alarming and kind of really gets us as employers to think about what are we doing to deal with this. But Randstad, in their most recent survey, literally 2025 report, surveyed thousands of employers around the globe, and it highlighted a leap that 16% moving to 24% in 1 year of employees said they have quit a job because they didn't feel comfortable sharing their personal viewpoints or stances at their work without discrimination or judgment. And I guess just at a broad level, if I think back to 20, 30 years ago, showing my age, around a sort of authoritarian command and control style of leadership that was probably deemed appropriate, holding people to account, etc. That statistic really puts a light on, okay, how do you actually combine these systematic approaches that make so much sense with an individualization or a culture where people are actually comfortable being themselves as well as striving towards organizational goals? So a bit of a complex picture there. Sasha, what are your thoughts on the employee, I guess, that culture that's comfortable for people to be who they are? Maybe that person that just got promoted you mentioned is maybe a great example.
Yeah, definitely. I think, freedom of opinion is one of the key measures of engagement. So I think people, at the end of the day, we spend so much time at work and we want to be able to be free to bring our true selves to work. Even work's come into our homes now with remote working. So I think people often describe that as trust, trust with their manager or trust to be able to be open and not judged. And basically, I guess it comes down to psychological safety, which is just as important as physical safety in a building products company. That's critical. So I mean, my style of leadership, and it's something I've evolved over years, is psychological safety is critical for me and the way I work with my team, and for me to feel safe with my team, even as a leader, right? It's not just about employees, but us as leaders being able to be bringing our true selves to work. And I think that comes from being vulnerable and being really open. And if you demonstrate that vulnerability as a leader, if you're open to say, I'm not perfect, I don't have all the answers, we're a team, let's build this as a team, let's solve this as a team. And that outdated old-fashioned notion of the boss having all the answers, command control, I think that's a lot of pressure on managers as much as it is on their people. So if we can strip that back, as a leader, bring your true self to work, be vulnerable, be open, it allows others to be the same. And I think that's really liberating, not only for your staff, but for yourself, to be able to take the pressure off, let others rise, because when you're vulnerable, others will step in and fill the gap as well. So I think it's a great way to drive engagement. That's what's worked for me personally. And I think vulnerability as a leader is actually a real sign of courage. So instead of looking at it as weakness, if we could look at it as a courage and a strength, I think there'd be more of it.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm just going to do a little plug here for everyone in the audience. I'll be keeping an eye on that chat box. So any questions you have along the way, other than me facilitating questions, I'll be keeping an eye on it. Feel free to ask, and I'll come back to you, hopefully, as they come through. So thanks, Sasha. Tom, that statistic, I know at MacStill, we've sort of dived into that a little bit. So People Coach have worked with MacStill quite considerably, and that statistic about, people feeling comfortable being their true selves. Anything to add from your perspective on top of what Sasha's already covered off?
Yeah, I think it for me, approximately 40 to 45% of our people globally have been through a people coach program, different five or six different levels of training and classes. For me, as a CEO, and I've been with Mac for about 28 years, 29 years, and so I came from the bottom up in the trading commercial side of things. And the number one thing for me is as a leader to show what your values are, what your core values are. I mean, mine are passion, persistence, humble and kind, and compound learning. So those are the four things that I tell people, this is what guide my behavior and decision making. And then I have 5 non-negotiable items that I let my direct reports see, and then the step down level people see. And those are just things that I say I die on the hill for. These are things that, we don't see each other every day. Everybody has decisions to make, but these are the 5 things that if you ever get in any questionable mark, or I'm not around, or you're not, this is where I'm at. And they're fairly wide, but they at least have people in the company know, okay, wow, Tom's thinking, these 5 to 9 things, and at least they're thinking about it. And so then, and it's not specific guardrails, but it's a view or a vision of how we want things to work in the company. And that eventually then is a culture. It takes time, but it builds up. Bring a new person into the business or a seasoned person into the business. They immediately see these things. I make sure they see it. I think it's helped me as a leader. But it's just beneficial overall.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Interesting, building on what I get out of Sasha and Tom's answers are building trust actually does take being open as a leader. Some of these things people bandy about as they almost become cliches these days, whether it's psychological safety or, vulnerability, but they become cliches because they're true, and you don't actually build fellowship unless you are open. And I guess some of what I'm taking out here from both different sort of perspectives, but both Sash and Tom, is, hey, they're actually showing their true selves, and the truth is there, out there amongst your employee group. They're not all happy. They've all got issues, etc. And so if you want to hear the truth, you kind of got to share your truth as a leader as well. So thanks, Tom. And
I think you're just one other quick thing. Some people like to be led. Some people want to be leaders, and it changes over time in their life, where they're at in their age or whatever. But if you throw that out there, you will find over time who your next leaders are. Because the next time you see them, they'll have their own non-negotiables, or they'll have their own values, or they'll simply ask the question, hey, that's interesting. What are those? How did you develop those? And then you can take that to the next level with those people. So,
yeah, it's funny you say that, Tom, because the first question we got from the audience is, I'm curious what's in your non-negotiables list, but I will come back to that in a second. And maybe I think as an example, if you share maybe 1 or 2 of those on the list in a second, just to sort of give a practical sort of lens to it. But I'll probably go to Lisa first. Anything to add at the sort of more general level around again, we're talking about that employee lens.
Yeah, I think, I'm really proud of our team because there's a lot of collaboration and teamwork, and in our business, it's really everybody chips in and helps. The hierarchy, isn't strong with that respect. The leaders come in, people approach leaders, everybody's pretty open, and we really encourage being yourself at work. We've got official programs on, diversity and inclusion and things like that. But I think it's really embedded into our business where we do encourage different views, and it's okay to have a different view and, not agree with each other. And actually it's really encouraged because it brings out a different perspective. And I think Sasha touched on the fact that leaders don't have all the answers. And I completely agree with that. I certainly don't have all the answers, and I do share that commonly with my team, saying, "Oh, what do you think? Because we need other perspectives, and we need to allow people to be themselves and really shine and bring their perspectives and be heard, because it really helps them to feel that they're participating and they're making a difference as well." So yeah, it's such an important element for us.
And just I'll quote the ex Honeywell CEO of 15 years who took, I think the share price was like $29 to 180 or something through his tenure, Dave Cody.
Cody, yeah.
Yep. He's got a pretty good quote, I reckon, which is, as CEO, my job is not to be right at the start of the meeting, it's to be right at the end of the meeting. And I think that's just a beautiful quote, because it just invites you as a leader to hold back, get your team contributing and growing, and then your job is to lead the next phase after you've got that contribution from the team members. Tom, why don't you, if you're gonna put your money where your mouth is here, the non-negotiables list, maybe just one or two, just to give people a sense of what do you mean by non-negotiables, as opposed to you listed out your personal values that you share with your team as well.
Yeah, the first one is there's no solo flights, and our greatest strength is our people. We have experts in all areas of our business, and we're better when we're surrounded by smarter people. And basically, I just say we're all coachable. I'm 63, and I've learned more in the last 5 years, than I have in the previous 20. And why? Because every day something changes, every single day. And I can't possibly know everything, but you have to check your ego at the door. We're all on the same team. It's the same field. It's the same, the other one is transparency. We have 3 business units around the world doing the same similar thing. We're trading steel and everything related to that, but basically steel. And so we have common knowledge around that, and just be open with each other, because if you can't fix it in Melbourne, there's somebody in Singapore or Dubai or New York that has the answer. Just be transparent. And then more is constructive communication in group settings. So we learn more by listening and not talking. And I'm probably as guilty as anybody of that.
It's not easy to do.
It's not easy to do, but if you're aware of it and you accept it, then you can change it. And the fourth one is just succession planning. I think that's my personal experience is things change. We got to be prepared. And there is talent out there in your company. There's 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 55, and 55 and up. We just have to identify them and tell them that I'm identifying you. Not that we're going to promise you anything, but we're at least identifying you. And then the last one was just open communication of ideas. Just well thought out ideas in meetings. Might work or they might not work, but it makes us better, but that's a fine line. A 1-hour meeting turns into 3. Okay, let's watch that. But they have to be well thought out. So
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and hopefully that gives not only the person that asked the question, but who was anonymous, which is all cool, gives them, but obviously everyone else, some examples of what you might consider around what do you want to share as your personal values in that openness and building trust, and then secondly, there's not a free license to go off and run in any direction in an organization. That's called chaos. But if you have a laundry list of 150 items versus a small, sharp list that's guidance, you're going to have chaos there, and people will be confused. We actually do have a question here from Fernando Pinto. So in the context of identifying and developing emerging leaders, how do we ensure that individuals who prefer to focus on their core business expertise rather than pursuing leadership roles are recognised and valued appropriately? So I think it's a great question, which is, I'm going to sort of translate it a little bit maybe about someone has a really fantastic skill set in a particular part of the business that's highly valued. They either don't want to or don't think their skills and strengths are aligned necessarily to become a senior leader. How does an organisation identify that and actually help that person grow in the area they're going to add value and they're going to be happy and fulfilled and not lose them to the competition, as an example? So great question from Fernando. I might throw that one to you first, Lisa, and then obviously other panelists to chip in.
So I mean, everybody has different career aspirations, and we have development discussions regularly with our teams, and that's really important to have those conversations and understand where they want to go. And some people don't want a leadership role, others fear, the change. So it's really understanding what their drivers are and then working with them to develop them to achieve those goals. And that might be through a range of things, like having stretch assignments where, and we encourage this, as a leadership team, we talk about our people. We have formal kind of get-togethers where we look at we call it our management resource review, and we look at people and their development needs and maybe what their next role will be, and discuss as a team how we can help to facilitate that, because the internal, the growth of our internal team is paramount. I think, Sasha gave that example earlier about the individual that is now in her LT. They're really important things. So what I would say is, if they really do want to just stay, and if I think of it in the context of Honeywell, they're a fantastic engineer and they don't want to be a leader, they just want to do engineering. There is an engineering career path. So then they follow that path. We don't want to kind of put everyone in the same box and say, you all need to be a general manager or you all need to be this or that. So it's really communicating that's important, and understanding people's career goals and then helping them to achieve them.
Yeah, thanks.
I just add, sorry, James, quickly,
Sasha.
In terms of, in our planning process, performance review process, everyone has a personal development plan. So I think it's important that the individual kind of crafts that, and it doesn't have to be about leadership development. We at Laminex really value health and wellness. So, for example, we all have a health and wellness goal in our development plans. So it could be, I've seen one recently where it's about quitting smoking or taking up running or, doing more mindfulness or yoga or whatever. So it doesn't have to be necessarily about career advancement, but having that continuous self-improvement and development plan that would be about their lifestyle as much as work.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. I'm hearing a lot about, so the question was around recognition. I'm hearing that, recognizing the strengths that people bring to the team in a leadership or an individual contributor role is key, without creating an environment where people feel the only way to get personal growth is by going down a leadership path. I'd probably just add a couple of things we're seeing at People Coach across our program. So we have these core programs around developing leaders into more responsibility and more senior leader roles, which we call emerging leader, developing leader, advanced leader. But what we found in the last few years is our clients coming back to us saying, sometimes we we need people coached on their career development, irrespective of whether it's leadership or individual contributor. So we've got a program now specifically that is not leadership, career development, that's been around for some time. And then the other thing that I find pretty interesting is, hold on, emerging leader implies that if you're in a leadership role at a certain level, you naturally want to increase your leadership seniority. And that's actually not true in many, many cases. And so our new programs have developed around now what we call a frontline leader role, which is a less senior leadership role that someone is more than happy to stay doing, and how to be better as a frontline leader, as opposed to let's coach you to become a more senior leader because we just naturally assume you want to become a more senior leader. So maybe that's a little lens from our perspective across a huge, number of different organizations that we deal with. It's definitely an important theme. So great question.
Yeah.
Tom, any kind of exceptions there or different perspectives from your angle?
Yeah, for me, it's a personal experience. I was 28 or 29 trading steel at Cargill, and they wanted to move me again. I had just gotten married, started a young family, and I said, I don't want to move anymore. I love trading. This is what I like to do. Can I stay here? And they said, okay, you can, but then you're in this box. And I said, well, that's what's a box? Well, you can only go so far in the company then. I said, well, okay. So it was a structure that put me away, made me go to Max Steel. So for me, it's very important to have an organizational chart and have a platform which defines the 4 areas of our business. And they're all important. And, there's operations people, there's finance people, there's traders, and then there's senior leadership. And those platforms, all 175 people fit somewhere in there. If they want to stay there, fantastic. If they want to grow in another area, that's great. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you say, well, here are the 4 platforms, and this is our core business. And if it doesn't work, then I'll help you find something else. So not every hunter can be a cook, and vice versa. Very, very few. And if you lose that key talent in either way, but that's a huge loss. So you have to, I guess for me, we have to have a platform where people can land and work and be happy. And then just be open with them. That's all.
Yeah, thanks. Great answers. I think the recognition of different roles, individual contributors versus leaders, and that talent retention being broad, and the Cargill, however many years ago versus Max Steel now, that example of not making people feel like the only way to grow is by going through a leadership path. So we've actually got a number of questions from the audience, and with about 24 minutes to go, I'm going to get a little sharp with this, pick off a question, shoot it at a panel member, and give them a pretty sharp window of maybe a minute or two to give their key thoughts on that. And I'll also move through a couple of other questions that I've got. So maybe, Lisa, how do you feel? This is from Shelby Kent. How do you feel about a person that approaches you for increasing opportunity for their careers?
Oh, that's great. That's like a gem. No, it's really good for people to make their career aspirations known, because, well, we're a really big organization and there's a lot happening. And so if someone approaches you, it allows you to, have that in the back of your mind when opportunities arise. They should also approach their direct manager as well, because they're even closer and can really explore with other teams in the business what's happening. And there's always change. Change is constant these days, right? And we're always developing and making changes in our business. So yeah, it's absolutely that's gold. So I really encourage that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. There's so many things I could add, and I'm sure the other panelists could to that as well. But I am hearing a kind of real sense that latching onto that enthusiasm and nurturing it is great, and I guess respecting the leadership role of that person's direct manager as well, and making sure you don't have some unintended consequences flow from that engagement as a CEO, as an example. I'm going to paraphrase a question from Joseph Gardner, and that would be, I'll shoot this to you, Sash, because then Tom's got one that someone singled him out for. So, Sasha, a question from Joseph is, how, I guess, if at all, do you make use of staff engagement survey data, identifying, leadership trends, etc.? So I guess I'm interpreting this as, complementing your anecdotal and intuition as a leader. How do you use data? And
absolutely,
yeah.
I actually do really rely on it quite a lot, and not only for my team but for my own learning about my leadership. So we do formal engagement surveys twice a year at Laminex, every 6 months, and rather than the metrics, and there is a lot of metrics about key leadership attributes like freedom of opinion and so forth. I find the nuggets of gold are really in the open comments that people leave rather than the raw scores. It definitely highlights, in my mind, managers that are doing a good job and others that need more support and what they might need more support around. So rather than using it as a witch hunt, how do we use it as a learning opportunity and a development opportunity? So, it's true that a lot of people feel safer leaving that feedback anonymously, and that's why it is anonymous. So I think that's key, and there is nuggets of gold in there about where we might have an issue and what we need to do about it. And each of our leaders are very aware of what their scores are, where their strengths are, and where there's development opportunities. And then they take that information and they all develop individual plans, engagement plans with their teams. And we actually bring the teams in to do that with the leader. So it's again, a team approach, and we all own our own engagement. It's not just the manager's job to make you engaged. It's up to the individual to be engaged, right? You can't make somebody engaged. So, there's clear action plans that come out of those surveys every 6 months around what we need to do differently to improve it. So, yeah, I think it is a great measure, actually. So thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, and Lisa, I'm not going to ask you because I think you and I could talk about the way Honeywell uses data for talent management for the next 3 hours, so we won't go down that path. I will ask Tom, though, very specific question. And it's from an anonymous attendee, but you mentioned your age 60 plus. I'm going to put my hand up and say 50 plus for me. You recently recruited. How do you ensure that you find the right team members no matter their age? And I'm just going to add my two bobs worth there and say, I think ageism is alive and well around the globe. It's almost the most acceptable, or one of many forms that are still acceptable of discrimination in society. So how do you look at that, I guess, Tom, in terms of making sure that, this role, if the right person's 60 or they're 20, you approach that without, let's say, bias?
I think for us, it's the role, it's the position. So I think, and it's who is the person? What can they bring to the table? How will they fit on the team? Whatever of the 4 platforms they're in, how culturally will they work in that group? And what value they can add directly and indirectly. Indirectly means we don't want a 23-year-old or a 45-year-old or a 60-year-old sitting here in Dubai if in the office of 50 people, if they're not passionate or have something to add. There's thousands of people in our business, age 50 to 60, that have a resume this long and of all the great things they've ever done. But what's the reality of that? Is that a piece of paper? Is it, so how do we we go through a series of interviews. So if somebody's going to come in, the two people we added are 45 and 47, I think it is. They go through a series of 3 interviews, and it starts at the medium level trader and operator, and then it goes to the next level and the third level, and they go through those 3 levels, and then it comes to me. And when I interview them, I talk nothing about business, nothing, because I'm assuming they made it through the 3 interviews with their talent that they can bring to the table, the actual numbers. Yeah, I'm interviewing the culture. I'm interviewing the person. I'm interviewing, family life, travel life. What do you enjoy? What do you, because I have to be able to be comfortable that I'll explain the 5 non-negotiables and the values to this person, and they can go somewhere in the company and represent Max Steel. So they have to fit the platform, and it's okay if they don't. No issues, So
Great. Thanks, Tom, and thanks for the question around ageism, I'm going to call it. And I guess it's defining requirements and really knowing your culture that you desire to have and adopt in your organisation, and making sure that's a huge part of the process is what I'm hearing back from.
Sorry, James. One thing I'll throw out there, since I'm the oldest guy in the panel, I'll pull rank. How's that? The world we're in today, the changing environment on a daily basis of everything. The talent in the age group 55 and up is in their head. And it's not on a piece of paper. It's not, at least in our business anyhow. And they don't know how to express that. They've never been taught how to express that. They've been taught to put your head down and go book something and get something done, and very methodical. But there's a lot of people in there that want to be open and want to have a platform to be open and work on. And we have one 64-year-old now. It's going to retire in a year, and she's going to remain as a consultant to any of the hubs in the business because the talent in her head is immeasurable. So you can't just kick these people to the side and say, okay, I'm going to go get another 25-year-old and start them up. Somebody has to train that 25 or 35-year-old. So we have huge talent in older, So, all right, I'll stop.
Thanks, Tom. Passionate. I did just come from a client meeting earlier this morning where the CEO has identified that they lack grey hair. It's an interesting comment that CEO made.
We've got the opposite problem. We're working out how to keep our aging workforce working for as long as they can, because our average age of our manufacturing staff is 55, which is a looming risk to our business. We've got 800 people in regional locations where it's really hard to recruit and train. So, we've always talked about diversity mainly with women and mums and flexibility. We're now talking about flexibility for pre-retirement, for workers to stay working longer who don't want to go from full-time to nothing overnight. So
well, another theme we could go deep on, and I really want to acknowledge as well, we are very much this is not a webinar on diversity, and we are only scratching 1 or 2 lenses on that matrix there. I'm going to shift a little bit. There's 2 questions that I think are quite related that happen to be very much a question I wanted to ask the panel anyway, and so I'm going to sort of blend those all together and probably go I guess first to you, Sasha, and that is there's a question here. Interested to understand if any of the speakers have programmatic emerging leader programs per se, how they work, activities, et cetera, and so I guess we've talked a lot about how important it is, some anecdotal views, the role of senior leaders in promoting, identifying, and leading strongly. I guess this is now moving a little more to, okay, in practical terms, what have you seen work to aid the business in talent management, particularly in this case, emerging and developing leader level? So, Sasha, we'll throw that to you initially.
Okay. I mean, the way we've done it, and I'm not saying we're perfect, but the way we've done it at Laminex is through this annual talent planning process. So there's our HR business partners support all managers in mapping their teams every year in terms of current and emerging talent. And then we have what's called the Top Talent Program at Fletcher Building. So those existing or emerging top talent people, and they don't have to be leaders, by the way, they're often individual contributors, are identified and nominated, and that's kind of peer reviewed by the SLT to determine that we've got the right mix people. And then they're put on this annual top talent program, and people rotate through that. They won't necessarily stay on it forever. New people drop off as they get promoted or leave or whatever, and then more people come through. So, and that's a mixture of that top talent program. I guess the first step, and someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was, it might have been yourself, James, to say the first step is actually telling people we really think you've got great potential, because oftentimes that just doesn't even happen, right? It's often not until someone's resigning that they suddenly realise how much their company loves them and how valued they are. So it's really the first step is identifying and telling people we want to help you develop. And then it's building that individual plan with them around what that looks like over the next 12 months. And that's a mixture of programmatic programs like People Coach, and we have worked with People Coach for a number of years, as well as more informal network opportunities. So they have a catch up with their peers, the other top talent academy, and internal mentoring with other senior leaders in the business, often outside of Laminex, so it might be one of our sister companies. And then they also get the opportunity to work on a sort of high-profile project cross-functionally and cross-company. So there again, it's really more, it's not so much about the project, it's really about what they learn working on that project and better connecting them with other people across the business. So we, in the future, when there's a vacancy, we can go, hang on, I remember, you know, Bob or Kelly from this other program I worked on. So yeah, that's how we do it. It's a mixture of informal and formal, and formal programmatic programs that are relevant for the level of that individual.
Thanks, Sasha. I'm going to go straight to you, Lisa, next on that same question. So we're really trying to share with the audience here per some of these questions, you know, where the rubber hits the road, what are you actually doing rather than saying is how I'd summarise it.
Yeah, we have a number of programs that are development programs at all levels. So like I just went on one 2 weeks ago. I was in the US at our corporate head office on a development program. And then we have those at all levels, and we work with People Coach on our a number of those. We have an Aspire program, which is an Asia Pacific program. We have the Emerging Leaders program. We have a number of those, and even at the earliest time to attract people, we have really well-established programs like our Space Camp, which has been running for 15 years. I think that's a very cool, program where we bring in cohorts of STEM students to the US Space and Rocket Center, and they have a week of leadership development. So we really do focus on emerging, attracting and then developing people in the business at all levels. So it's quite structured what we do, and varied. So it really gives leaders in the business a really wide look at what they can do for their teams and how they can develop their teams and what's the right program to really prepare them for the next step in their career.
Thanks, Lisa. And what I'll note here is these three senior executive leaders are from three very different companies. So, Honeywell is an enormous company with 130,000 employees, whatever the latest number is, and there's huge spend and structure to those programs. I'd say Fletcher's / Laminex are kind of big corporate, but not quite as global, and and probably there's more emphasis on what are you doing locally to develop something from the bottom up. And having said that, I know Lisa does local and follows, global structured programs. And then Tom, I guess, you mentioned probably very much sort of trading, professional sort of services, 170 odd employees globally spread. So maybe just rounding it out, because our audience are probably going to be spread across different organisations as well. I know you've looked at, MacU and obviously you mentioned collaboration with PeopleGoach, but yeah, what would you add to what you do practically around particularly that emerging and developing leader where these questions are coming from?
I think mentoring, the word that comes to my mind is mentoring people at all ages. So, we got where we are in our careers because people helped us. And you just have to sit down and say, okay, who are those 4 or 5 people? And it can be quite specific. And then you say, well, what did I learn from that person? So, okay, I learned that. So now you think, all right, there's a 25-year-old kid walking in the door and he or she wants this, that. You first ask, what do you want? What here? And they probably don't even know what they want. So you then help them develop a plan, a strategy. I mean, that engagement alone says to them, oh my God, there's a leader of the company that's actually interested in who I am as a person. And he or she's explaining what we do as a business. And it's a place they want to come to every day. They want to at least, and it might not work, I don't know, but at least it's an openness. So then the next level, 30 to 40 or 45, depending on the age, you put a lot of responsibility on them. I wish, looking back at my career, I wish Cargill had put more responsibility on me. I was capable of taking a lot of weight. I didn't think I was at the time, but you can put a lot of extra responsibility, very specific goals, strategies on young kids today. And you'll learn very quickly if they can handle that or if they can't. But they'll appreciate it. The ones that can love it. Like, oh my God, I have this responsibility. Yeah, you have that responsibility. Now you're accountable for it. And let's talk about it, with your line manager or trading manager, or whatever. So for us, it's our budgeting process is every October, and it starts from the ground up. So the traders in the field start their budget. I can sell this, I can buy this. And this is my profit. And then it builds up, comes to us at the top. We refine it, and then we send it right back down. And we have 15 divisions around the world. And each division has their strategy sheet, and it's theirs. I can walk in, or I can pick up the phone and call one of the traders and say, what are you doing today? Okay, well, how's your strategy sheet going? And it's a touch point. And then outside with people coach programs, they love that. They love the outside independent view, outside of Mac, to help them. And so, yeah, it's just, for me, it's mentorship and give them immediate responsibility.
Thank you, Tom. I know we've got a couple of further questions, but we are coming right to the end of this session. So what I'd actually like to do now is just call out a few things that I've noted as themes through the hour, really in terms of what does it take, listening to these 3 senior leaders, to actually identify, attract, develop, and retain talent. I guess the first thing I'm hearing as a theme is show personal interest. And that personal interest is, these days, far more than decades ago, is at an individualized level. It's about meeting that person where they are, as opposed to just forcing top down. This is what the company expects you to be, and hide any part of yourself that doesn't fit that mold. So the first thing I'd say is show personal interest. And Tom's comment just at the end there around, the 25-year-old that has the CEO show an interest, it can go miles. I'm sure we can all think, anyone, let's say, in the latter part of their career, can all think about the power of a senior leader showing that personal interest in our career and what that did to guide us. The next theme that I'd really highlight is that interest should be shown to individual contributors who have talent and high potential without an interest in leading, as well as top talent that have a real power to lead at scale in the future. Both are critically important to organisations. I guess the next thing, those two items I would say are not necessarily overly structured. They're very much leadership based. I guess what I've heard also through today is really deliberate investment in structured approaches, how big or how small, to identify and develop and retain your talented people. And the why behind that is because it's so important, which was our first sort of 10 minutes on the webinar, was it's so important to differentiate from your competition and grow as an organisation. Then you better have some level of focus, investment and structure in developing. And we've heard from 3 very different organisations around, how structured it might be, how much process there is, what spend there might be. It's all very different. But if you don't have a purposeful structure and process to drive that talent, you won't get results. I'm going to actually finish, though, on highlighting something we didn't discuss, but was a question. It's the last question of the webinar audience, and that is, how do you assess or measure the effectiveness of these programs? And whilst we haven't discussed it, I guess that is a key question that comes to People Coach all the time with clients. Like, if we're going to invest in these programs, how do you measure them? And I'll throw out a few ideas I can say from experience, and that would be, we'll often now encourage clients to look at bookend profiles or surveys, 360s. So actually, you're going to start a program and 12 months later, we're going to use the exact same profile or some period later to measure the impact across your leadership circle, if you like, so we can actually measure whether there's been development in those areas. And then I guess I just go back to what I think particularly Sasha and Lisa said around the processes that actually do measure progress and making that a transparent process across the full senior leadership team rather than in silos and departments. So I'm going to finish up and say thank you so much to all the audience that joined us, for all of those who are going to listen to this subsequently, and definitely for Tom, Lisa and Sasha for your generosity in donating your time and sharing your experience. So thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, guys. Yep. Thanks, Lisa, Sasha.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys.